Okay, it's 5:05. I have started Facebook, recording to the cloud. I am going to mute all, and it's up to you, Mark, to start the show.
Thank you, John. And yeah, welcome all to another episode of Lit Balm. Tonight we have a grand crew with us. We have Brenda Hillman, Ronaldo Wilson, Michael Ruby, and Roxi Power. And a power show it will be, I'm sure. Before we get started with the feature, let's hear from my co-host, the illimitable Jeffrey Cyphers Wright, who received his MFA studying with Allen Ginsberg. He's known as a new romantic poet. He's also a publisher, critic, eco-activist, impresario, filmmaker, puppeteer, and artist. Jeff is the author of 19 books of verse, including Blue Lyre and Party Everywhere. And his poems appeared in many venues, including New American Writing, The Brooklyn Rail, Posit, and many others. Also in the anthologies Best American Poetry, New York Insiders, and Contemporary Surrealist and Magical Realist Poetry. His most recent work is a book of sonnets, an artwork called Doppelgangster, which is out from Mad Hat Press. Jeff recently won the Sir Vision James Tate Prize, and his book is also available from Sir Vision now. So here we go, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Doppelgangster publisher, Mark Mad Hat. You appreciate that, man. Yeah, Doppelgangster's out from Mad Hat Press. Hey, I ran into Mark Scroggins today at Boog. He said to say hi. Said he was just talking to you. All right. So this poem is called. It's a little sonnet. Oh, 1 second. I'm sorry. Turn off my AC here. Thank you. Thank you. Put out. Put out. Was cranky at first light. Got bit by a mosquito. Bitten, you correct. And smitten, I might add. An eye for an eye. You do I have. That's what the good book says. All the world's a stag, my dear, and perfects a verb, perfect the wheel. That's my duty in the court of appeal. I too want the stars to don sugar coats and spin into provinces new to our scope. The smooth newt, also known as the common newt, is not so common nowadays, though. Throwing soft grenades of light, my love sows the playing field. She is worth her weight. I wouldn't trade her for a hairy harem. The breeze grown husky with restless leaves. Oh, put out. So it's supposed to be about, thank you. It was supposed to be about, like being cranky and put out. So it's a great pleasure to welcome the ever-essent and ever wonderful and beautiful Cassandra Atherton, the award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra co-wrote Prose Poetry and Introduction and co-edited the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry. She's commissioning editor for Westerly magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. And it's rumored that she's writing a poem about clams with mango necks. Please welcome our wonderful host, Cassandra.
Hi, everyone. Good morning from Melbourne. I always mean to update my bio too, and we were talking earlier about poems based on music or malaphrastic poems, and I'm writing a book for Princeton on ekphrastic poetry. So if you have some poems on music or dance, which I've termed ballaphrastic, please, I'll put my email address in the chat because I'm right in the middle of a chapter on that now, so it's on my mind. But today I'm going to read a poem that the wonderful poet, English poet Fiona Sampson, commissioned from me for the journal New Humanist, which is a really great journal. I recommend you check both poet and journal out. And so this is a short 2-part prose poem called La Rêve. Picasso's paintings line the walls of your memory palace, fevered, twining images in a swing of paints. You trace the round, thick lines on the canvas, and I feel your finger pads tracing the curve of my thigh. In the center of the room, a Peter Pan collar and cuffs chart your obsession, the remnants of your golden muse. Among the ruins, I hear the rhythm of a lullaby in the oversimplified lines of Le Rêve, but you are listening to the secrets hidden in the curlicues of his last handwritten letter. You tell me you are not Picasso, but I lie naked on a red cushion and wait for adrenaline to restart your heart. 2. You keep me hidden like Marie-Therese Walter. I exist only in the erotic code of entwined initials, in scattered references to stringed instruments, the whiteness of the dove. I am soft, round shapes on your canvas, petals of flowers, fruit in a bowl, a curve aching to be straightened. In my Peter Pan collar, you find your childhood like a smooth boomerang. I am those hot January nights, the ocean's foam filigree on wet sand. You say you are not Picasso, but I might be the young woman leading the blind minotaur. Now I would like to introduce, using my favorite bio of every show, the incredible Mark Vincennes, who is, please join in, an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist and musician. He's published over 40 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently The Pearl Diver of Irun-Mani, The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars, and The Mayfly Codex. Forthcoming poetry collections are Spells for the Wicked with Unlikely Books, Ironclad, if you don't know about it, you need to find out about it, with Spite and Dival, and No More Animal Poems with White Pine Press. Mark is also a prolific translator, and he's translated from German, Romanian, and French. He's published 11 books of translations, most recently an Audible Blue Selected Poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist, you know his name, Klaus Mertz. And it won the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. Here's our favorite bit. He has lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are still more bowl and doily weavers, red-spotted ant mimics, and sleepy orange sulfurs than bipedal hominids. Mark, I love a sleepy orange sulfur. Do you have a poem?
Of course, of course. This poem's actually called Karma, from The Pearl Diver of Irun-Mani. And it is kind of a meditation on going toward death and coming back out of it. Karma. How the birds have stopped singing, how the green has become grey, how your last words resonate. This is the very thing you are. A short note from the heart. I could still hear his laughs from where, while reading at the kitchen lamp, the night was windowless. The words split apart as the housefly drilled into the cracks. But there was grace here in its silent voluptuousness, bearing down upon my breast like an ocean, ignorant, old and preserving, and hunched I walked the narrow passage into the dreams of my dreams, afraid of what it meant to be orphaned, to be departed, or the money spent on acquiring identity in the light that louvers in the I do. in the shuffling of thought between the latter and the former, in the fate of family or the smell of consequence in all its sizes, flooded in impartial stares. How the near-sighted cloud in the pane has little fear of the unknown, and the illusion of will in the small, gentle order recalls the belligerent, the delinquent, the crushed genes of atomic time, where such small quarry was the pastime of lesser gods, of forest spirits or water fry, where the sky forks away and where we were reborn again every second Sunday among the birds. And now I am absolutely delighted and thrilled to present Brenda Hillman, who was born in Arizona and has lived in the San Francisco Bay Area since '75. She's a professor emerita at St. Mary's College, was a chancellor of the Academy of American Poets from 2016 to 2022, and currently directs the Poetry Week at Community of Writers. Brenda has edited and co-translated several dozen books, including At Your Feet by Ana Cristina Cesar, co-translated from Portuguese with her mother, Helen Hillman, and her most recent book of poems is In a Few Minutes, Before Later, Wesleyan, and her first book of prose, Three Talks, has just been published by University of Virginia Press. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
And Cassandra and Jeff, and thanks for having me. Thanks for coming today. So I'm going to read a little bit. This is what the first book of prose looks like. It's very autumnal. And so I had fingernails to match. And happy equinox to everybody. I thought I'd just read a few paragraphs. The book is called Three Talks, Metaphor, Metonymy, Meaning, and Mystery, and Magic and Morality. It's 3 talks that I delivered for University of Virginia Kapnick residency during the pandemic. For about 6 decades of writing poetry, I've wrestled with the same questions over and over. Some are ontological. Why does the universe exist? How does the spirit world fit with ordinary matter? What is the inaccessible meaning of nature and existence? Some questions are aesthetic. What is poetic language? How much strangeness am I permitted as I represent my experience in poetry? How can I best represent, to quote Marianne Moore, an imaginary garden with real toads? Some questions are autobiographical. Who was I in my childhood? What is my subjectivity beyond being a white grandmother poet teacher with an unruly inner life? What is a Brenda anyway? And some of the questions are social. Who is my audience? What is a human among species? What are the moral, political, and scientific responsibilities of poets? Live the questions, writes Rilke. And further along in that essay, myths retain their truths if you metaphorize them. I grew up in the Sonoran Desert, the middle child of fervently Protestant parents, raised by fervent Protestants. Stories like those of Lazarus were told as the historical truth. Hard to say whether the story or the image of Lazarus was odder, which is why I love Evie Shockley's rendering of Lazarus safe below the line. I decided in adolescence to rescue the Judeo-Christian tradition from itself, which involved seeing many earthly practices as metaphoric. There is, for example, church communion, which Baptists call the Lord's Supper. Children taking Christian communion, when they come to consciousness, realize that the practice involves the astonishing and the weird because of the premise of eating the body and drinking the blood. At our Baptist church, Nabisco saltine crackers were used in communion. The deity was both a cracker and an invisible spirit, a fact to be continuously renegotiated. My brothers and I would peer down into steel trays filled with tiny pieces of saltines and watch as trays with the delicate fluted glasses of Welch's grape juice shook and rattled. It's unclear why Baptists use saltine crackers. Possibly bread would be considered too Catholic, and certainly an elite object like a wafer would seem too Lutheran, which was far too close to Catholic. Jesus lived in the invisible realm far away. The saltine cracker representing his body was very local. My mother, wearing white gloves, had the ability to pick up the tiniest piece of cracker, about a half-inch square, with her glove and get it successfully to her mouth without a single crumb falling onto her immaculate lap. My theory was she chose the smallest piece out of self-sacrifice, and the larger inch-sized pieces were left for others. So I'm going to skip the middle essay, Meaning and Mystery, and read some poems along that line, and go to Magic and Morality, which is largely discusses my activist practice in relation to poetry. One winter, I'm married to a poet, Bob Hass. One winter, Bob and I met Janet Wheel and Kat Factor at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, where they fly the Predator drones. We did a vigil for several days, reading poetry outside the base as the enlisted folks drove in. Police came by and showed us the line we couldn't cross. As we were being observed and as the eyeless drones flew very close overhead, I tried imagining, as Joni Mitchell writes in Woodstock, that the drones turned into butterflies, or at least wasps with dangly legs. We flattened our books and held them up to the drone to photograph them, imagining young pilots flying the drones inside the base in their shorts, looking at a poem instead of practicing to kill someone at a wedding in Yemen. This became part of the process. I spoke last week about the use of trance or the waking dream. This can be useful during stressful actions. Behaving unconventionally like this may seem embarrassing, but using robots to bomb helpless people half a world away is intolerable. So that's the little book. It's out there. It's my first book of prose. I thought I'd read, this is a book a couple books ago. It's called Seasonal Works with Letters on Fire, and it really covers, there are 26 seasons at least in California. So I tried to write a poem every 2 weeks for 4 years. And I'm going to read the first poem in the book because it's pumpkin season, and I have the thought that pumpkins have a very special inner life, and their seeds are seeing inside, and so my cat tried to write into that. To spirits of fire after harvest. Between earth and its noun, I felt fire. What does it mean by I, Mrs.? It means, and I quote, one of the vowels in the brain and some of the U's. We were interested in the type of thing humans can't know, interested in the kinds of think animals think, a rabbit or a skink. You Mrs. Skiltonianus, when autumn brings a grammar, wasps circle the dry stalks and you can totally see through amber ankles dangling and dazzle under our Lord, the Son of Literature. Between noon and its noun, there were ridged and golden runes on pumpkins, bluish gourds in the fields, their white eyes lined up inside. Wait a sec. Please don't nail the door shut. The air is friendly and non-existent as Veronica's veil. Earth, don't torment your fool, your ambassador clown. Bring the X of oxygen and sex, a fox running sideways through present noon. And I'll read a couple poems from this book, which is my latest book. It's called In a Few Minutes Before Later. My friend, our friend Louise Glick, who just died last year, suddenly had a period of not being able to write, and she wrote to me and said, I can't write, and tell me what to do. And I said, think about the feeling right before your feeling. The feeling right before the feeling. At sunrise, the deer eat pieces of the quiet. They eat spaces between the quiet and the sounds. And the numbers on the calendar lie flat in their boxes. They leak through tiny holes in the minutes, evenly so evenly, an active sense before the sense was made. There now, opposite to set down, the agreed upon, the shape of the obvious, drawn by an earlier enchantment before the new anxiety set in. The workers are safe, the terror stilled for an hour. A lover's outline, dreamed or imagined, before you read the one-page book again. What was that book? It had no copyright. And what was before? A life, the dazzler, the dark, the singing dust. It turned when you turned. It Orpheus knew what you forgot when you took the bowl of time across the room. And if the previous is closer to you now, should you look? It doesn't matter if you do. You carry the sum of it with it out into it. And I'll read two more poems. This is called Escape and Logic. It is from a series of poems, and I'm reading this for Roxi because we talked about it. And I worked on this series of poems during the time that we were having wildfires, and I kept having to pack the car and unpack the car, pack the car, unpack the car, pack the car, unpack the car. And Bob was about to have heart surgery, which he did. He had open heart surgery during the pandemic. And I thought, you shouldn't put off writing poems for people that you love and reading them to them, because there just isn't that much time. So, Escape and Logic. I hear tonight the great horned owl, 4 gray notes superior to beauty. Come to the window, I say. My love can't hear and I can't see. We trade senses throughout the day. Last night, 12,000 lightning bolts upon the earth. Upon, such a stiff word. Where did we put our glasses? Upon the dresser. Packing the car, folding color while workers start what's called backfires for culms of late grasses, where the ordinary is swollen, breathing ash, the neurotransmitters making a pact with the logic world, allowing entities, allowing fury at the ends of towns, racist prophets of extraction, Blake's angels moored in their fury, cultures in migration, unredeemed upon the earth. Here in the garage, smoke specks for company, packing items. Some pine save seeds now burning to grow. Here comes to mind June Carter's Ring of Fire and her sister's cool rendition. Chrome aperture of ash, mirage spider. Did I help my love at all? I worry that I did not. Thousands of days he helped me. Loading family papers, a doll the screws fell out of, my mother's extreme red high heels from 1968. The brain snags in the subtler cells, acetylcholine, glutamate, pumping between minutes. My love sleeps in his nature through phone alerts. Mostly we have not failed each other. Foxtail grasses burning, the bossy squirrel sleeps nearby in nests of justice and spirit threads to put its slumber in. We named names of Western grasses that burn now, non-native fescue and brome, avena. We took a class, kindly but sanctimonious white people in gray clothing stooping with hand lenses over species brought by colonizing soldiers centuries back. Grasses speeding to their doom, young firefighters and entities. Is a group of angels always called a host, never a flock? Cherubim, seraphim, or fani, among angelic hosts, Rilke cried, sending his daughter away. Some poets take solitude too far. Western angels drop their wings like termites in the heat. Some are pushed like coins in a vending machine. Organic angels aren't sprayed. We're helpless with wind picking up our own collective to the edge. There is indeed a mystical consciousness where we will all meet, but how we arrive we have no pilot for. Loading pounds of paper in the hybrid. A poem is also a hybrid. Mind and Miracle, wrote Dee. Intensity gathered. When the young asked, what was the most difficult thing for you as a writer? The most difficult thing is to love. Actually, the most difficult thing is to feel loved. And I'll read one more really tiny, teeny poem from, I'm working on a book about my mother's house and childhood, which is a really hard subject, I think. Thank you so much for your attention, and everybody is so wonderful in your souls, listening to poetry and doing your work and your solitude. And I just appreciate all poetry audiences so much. It's called Creation of the Semicolon, and it's, you know, just about that moment in childhood when you're just thinking about every mark you make. The teacher's voice blurred like a warm sparrow. The child lifted her pencil. The dot paused in the pencil, but emerged when light offered support for the dot. Then the comma, rooted in blankness, met a calm that gathered force. Thank you so much. Looking forward to everybody else.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Beautiful reading. Next we hear from Ronaldo O. Wilson, who is a doctor, poet, interdisciplinary artist, and academic. Ronaldo is the author of Narrative of the Life of the Brown Boy and the White Man, which was winner of the Carvey Cullen Prize, Poems of the Black Object, winner of the Tom Gunn Award for Gay Poetry and the Asian American Literary Award in Poetry, Father Traveler, Poetry, Prose, other finalists for a Tom Gunn Award, and Lucy 72. Ronaldo's latest books are Carminella, Figures and Virgil Kills, Stories, and which was the recipient of numerous fellowships, including Carvey Kahneman Fine Arts work in Provincetown, the Ford Foundation, McDowell, the Robin Rauschberg Foundation, and the Aldo. Ronaldo is a professor of creative writing and literature at UC Santa Cruz, serving on the core faculty of the Creative Critical PhD program, and he's a principal faculty member of CRES, Critical Race and Ethnic Studies, and affiliate member of DAM, which is Digital Arts and New Media. Welcome, Ronaldo.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction, and thanks to everyone. I don't know many of you, but it's so beautiful to be here. I don't know some of you, but it's so nice to be invited. Nice to hear the introductions from Mark, Cassandra, Jeff, and also it's great to be reading with Brenda, whom I don't think I've met in person. Yeah, it's nice to meet you here virtually. Roxy, thanks for pulling us together, and Michael, it's always good to see you. So I'm excited because I'm putting together a class, which doesn't sound so exciting, but to me it is. It's a course that is straddling the metaphor and the image and trying to figure out the relationship between the two. I work as a visual artist and a poet. So those are the kind of two poles that I'm working on. So I thought I would have some fun today and think about just time and read across 4 works in intervals of I guess less. And now I was thinking 20 minutes, but no, I'll read 4-minute intervals. So I'll read it 16 and then kind of improvise in the end around what happened. I have a sense of, I'm just going to start now, so I know to stop at like 16 minutes or so. So I wanted to think about a few works that start this reading. And I was inspired a lot just recently in coming into the conversation, which was seemed to me about where poetry goes between the AI, the HI, the human intelligence we often forget about, and also, which is a far more interesting than artificial intelligence, and also, Cassandra's invitation around all of these, the ekphrastic, the sort of dance generated work. I'm trying to think. I think about my work in those contexts. So I'm going to read a series of, I think, portraits. The first is from Farther Traveler. Self-portrait is Dig. These are all origin poems, I think, for each of these books. Riptide sucks the body down at Playa Marbella, lost in the topiary, deep in the rot. You glut in the riot. Release your triceps. What are you feeling? Thick as the dry shit caked on your index finger. Spy it, sniff. You rot canola, ground flax, fecal fucker, prolapse. Such mess in your gut, a helix in the echo between rooms. Nothing is where inside you've hooked in, digging out the toxic grain bound in the body. You own no truth because you were owned. Not ancillary, statue pigeoned, the wash, sweet foul in shame, holding the body's infinite skin. The sonnet cycle I worked on. And I'll read from Poems of the Black Object, a poem, sort of a more of a meditation, I think, prose poetry meditation. This was called Virgilio in Space 5, Caliban X, Remonster. Once I wrote a short response piece at a summer youth camp called Macular Degeneration, which was about an old dying white man's dead mother. I ended up going home with him somewhere in Connecticut and always next to some giant freshwater pond. But before we got to all the air, I thought if he wanted, he could shoot me in the head and push me out of his big car on whatever stretch of highway we were on. At some point in the night, he told me his mother lost her ability to see straight forward, hence her macular degeneration, which developed further until she died. I loved thinking of her growing peripheral and permanent new sight. I can't make the direct connection between that and the poetic suggested in a note Mendy gave me about the fun in turning out the parenthetical into, which occurs sort of like the curve into a waist, even though I aspire towards that particular hiplessness, no waist and a single line for everything I do. I was thinking earlier today about certainty. I was reading XX the other day and got XX. If I am XX, I will be seen as XX. And then my XX of a life will matter to XX. Now figuring that out gets unduly complicated by, but I am an XX who chooses to write as an XX, and that XX is loved by XX and maybe by YY, and YY who all love me. Further, they made XX, but never YY, only some perversion of our XY fantasy, which is always a matter of race, which is, after all, a bibliographical construction of being celebrated as the ever recognizable me in print, but not in space. Mow down the mode. So I'll stop with that and read the footnotes that I skipped over. 1, unpublished. It, in fact, is in a box somewhere stored as a 3x5 floppy disk someplace and can only be accessed by a computer that refuses to decompose in some landfill. 2, of course, I prefer no curves at all unless they be the angle, the cryptographic slant into figurative space is towards a poetics of internal excess. How I refuse to comment other than by cryptographic gesture or by yet another sentence, but I would kill to be Kate Moss, Rory Abernathy, and especially James King. This is a long time ago, so these folks are kind of out of the ether, but they were supermodels of the time. I'll read another sonnet since there's a little bit of time at 5 minutes. Skin. The geezer pace in the Red Wing Y whispers fielding poems in my ear. Queer men piled on one another at some mountain cliffs drop. Down goes the 72-year-old white, tased on TV at the side of the road in Austin, Texas. Zapped by cops, she squeals like a hog seared by hot iron stoke. How smug she reclines for the YouTube's glean, the law by her side. This grandma pushes the pig, screams, "Give me the fucking ticket." The bird moth's wing flops, the beetle crushed its outer scale pulvers when my puma tries to flick it dead and dead. The bug insignificant spun in the porch web, the brown corpse trapped. The invitation, I think, to read these poems are perhaps born in the kind of parallel construction between two candidates I perhaps love and two candidates I perhaps hate, and a rap artist who is being excoriated on how neutral about him, but not neutral about the delicate perversion of yet another Black figure being paraded out in the most heinous way, Black Nazis, Black bodies. Those kinds of things, I think, are propelling this reading. The puncture of the feeling, perhaps, that Brenda talks about, the feeling before the feeling within the poem that emerges inside of the reading. So that's my invitation, which continues to draw me through my work. So we're somewhere near the middle, and I'll read from my latest book. Yeah, it's the latest. It's a book of, I call them stories. I'm old-fashioned that way, just stories. And I'm going to read from what I think is the opening of this collection, which actually happened after seeing Nas and the rapper Nas, and also Dave Chappelle in concert in Rockefeller, at the Rockefeller, I don't know, not Rockefeller Center, but the Radio City Music Hall years ago. The night before I saw Serena Williams playing, I don't know, she was in a sort of, I think, I'm not sure who she was playing at the time, but right across from me, because I bought these really expensive seats with my research account, was Jay-Z and Beyonce moments away, and then Serena. And I felt extremely triangulated as a poet at that moment between these Black stars. And afterwards, I wrote this poem after leaving that tennis match, or I'm sorry, a day after leaving the tennis match and a day after Nas and Dave Chappelle. This is called The After Party, which inspired this entire collection. Kyle from Korea wanted to order a Long Island iced tea. He wears braces, little bolts between his tiny top teeth, and he works in New Jersey but lives in Queens. His face that night was like a small moon with shiny black hair around it, his smile pink, and his English moved around his need to make others touch, lifting a stranger's hand onto the arm of another, wanting to force together those he'd never have. People only hate her like me, and he thinks all Americans are friendly. They're always smiling. Virgil soon realized that Kyle understands American to be white. And Virgil's the protagonist of this collection. Virgil thinks Kyle also understands this fact to be confirmed by knowing he would have to walk towards the train into the dark morning alone out of the bar with his big gray backpack over his shoulder. Kyle's hand did slip, showing the outside of Virgil's ass lightly, and how could Virgil recall this as he worried about what he was caught in Butch's eye? An irritant Butch would watch out with artificial tears. But as Virgil worried, he knew that Chris was being clocked by scales for flesh. Scales for flesh's skin, Chris pointed out, was the only thing, as in it was what separated him from the rest of the men Chris slept with. Those defining scales, Virgil imagined, scalloped down scales for flesh's back. And like an asshole, Virgil injects into Chris's description, psoriasis? Chris, too, knew it was why Scales for Flesh wore so many layers of clothing, a full-on suit in the humid city and even in the bar, but trussed up to his thick neck. It's as if his whole head was wrapped in a cocoon. Virgil caresses Scales for Flesh's back Banana Republic button down stomach, fat and stretched, and not because Kyle pulls his hand into it, but to cock block scales for Flesh's attempt to get again with Chris, who wears a beard, white and round, yellowing at the base of his stash, stained with smoke above the rim of his mouth. So let's just stop there with that image of this, amazing beard, this figure Virgil's remembers in a time. And I'm going to close from a brand new collection I'm calling now Refuge Whimsy Portraits. I'll just read, sort of in the middle of it, and you'll kind of see what's going on. And I'll just stop when I stop, right? Soon. The poem that I'm starting with or the place I'm starting with is called Q40, and it has a footnote of 25. I'll start with a footnote. Singe it. It was apparent in this land called Capitu. It was apparent in this land called Capitu. It was apparent in this land called Capitu. There are angels in this land when people sing where people sing, and a land that I know where angels are, space is the place. I'll go back to the poem. Oh, Capitu, in the land Sardo Monastery, Stian erect and bills are con streets, but of course there's go tantans, led the pantos and mongos we owe, mother flacka slacka kitty, waka back and go ons, gibberish shake and shake, gibberish rhyme, achy breaky, off a hole in van portal pole, per window dumper diver play, rumpa pum pum, rumpa pum pum. Me and my drum, rhythm polyglottin, fun times, paramours, and spelunks a dunk. America runs on Duncan. Berlin don't play either, but got what wheat bread, nuts, and flat meat, and Amboys got something for ya. GoPro for show in the Hemi, which is my white car sill, Afak Nanny C. Lee, and a Palance. Leave it out, sugary snack. You play to pay, you break the cycle of the lawns. Joy to the world. My cast is gone, Paradon. What? Jirbi con say. And I'll read the final footnote of Jir Gib con say. Footnote number 21. I shall close with this. The document herefore is the official language, as much as it is led by the manifesto of all twigs, considered the PBS signifier in and is all out porn fest engorged with gray tops who reflect on the moment that they got the cheese flap sucked. This be born language, tongue, flight fee, flee on badly know, a flask in the back of a shared Volkswagen diesel. It appears measured, but in the end, there is in its darts and epaulets the existence of another line language, the vector of that's amore, choreo poem now and then entezake, Eminem, a part of a little low-life book of letters made some track repair, not reparative. You have to get it, and said the life of the Banjo Boys burning in your memory. You have to get it. The club, you have to get it. But it is that you will give over to the all over the place, the teaching, the travel, the map, the source, the space of the pen in the ink, flying first class, rinky dinky dinks are often where you have to look to pay the toll on the leisure, buck up, buck tooth knot, dentists at the infirmary, then look past the fit boys and masks and pink halo heads and silver daddy panorama in the toothy trap, gates over bites, because you, parrot, fish, tale, story, lie, glue, and cut into meaning matters equals. If the residencies past are just enough to say it, then bye-bye, blackbird singing to the break of dawn. Thank you.
All right, Ronaldo, what a great crescendo there, huh? Delicate perversions. Thank you, Ronaldo Wilson, man. All right. So it gives me a great pleasure to be here, of course, today, just all this good stuff. And now to welcome my friend Michael Ruby. Michael is a poet, literary editor, and journalist. He's the author of 8 books of poetry, most recently Close Your Eyes, Visions from Station Hill. And I know Michael spends a lot of time up there, and he's been doing movies and performing around Kingston. Another book from Station Hill, The Star-Spangled Banner. The Mouth of the Bay from Blaze Vox. American Songbook, beautiful book from Ugly Duckling, where he chops up a lot of blues songs in a beautiful way. And Compulsive Words from Blaze Vox 2010. His trilogy in prose and poetry, Memories, Dreams, and Inner Voices, is also from Station Hill. I'm sorry, Inner Voices Heard Before Sleep is from Argotist. Michael's other ebooks are Close Your Eyes from Argotist, Titles and First Lines from Mudlark, and Compulsive Words. He co-edited Bernadette Mayer's early books, Eating the Colors of a Lineup of Words, which was published by Station Hill in 2015. Bernadette and Louis Warsh's collaboration, Piece of Cake, Station Hill, and currently Michael's been working on a large selected poems of the late Steve Dalachinsky. And Michael lives in Brooklyn and has worked for many years as an editor of U.S. news and political articles at the Wall Street. And I think he's free now, though. Michael Ruby.
Thanks so much, Jeff. And thanks all for having me and for tuning in on a Saturday afternoon. I'm going to read from my new book, Close Your Eyes Visions, published by Station Hill in the Hudson Valley. Here's what it looks like. For several years, I wrote prose poems about what I saw with my eyes closed, mostly shapes and colors. Then one day I made an accidental discovery. If I closed my eyes and focused on an area of turbulent light in the dark visual field, I was much more likely to see brief, realistic, and surrealistic visions. I think of these areas of turbulence as burbling fountains of fragmentary visions that only reach consciousness under certain conditions, such as mental illness or surrealist research, or the last seconds before falling asleep. Here are two of the longer visions in the book. Vision, July 16th, 2007. It's the first moment of dawn. We're not going to see anything here. Some shoes and clothes strewn on the floor. Some glasses and plates left on the table. This plant reminds me of a ladder. The ticket office is quiet. A cup of coffee cools on the zinc counter. His car is stored on blocks in the shed. A cloud presses against the sole small window. A tire hangs from a tree outside. An elephant sits under the tree. The elephant has never been so young. On a flat embankment above a river, denuded by the Army Corps of Engineers, eyeglasses glint in the grass. A purple bottle sits on the middle of the table. No one comes and sits at the table. It's funny for some obscure reason. Pink and purple flowers line the edge of the garden. A blonde girl comes part way out the screen door, stops for a second, and returns to the kitchen. Light coats a giant white fungus on the side of a tree. Purple waves spread outward from a man's head in a black room. Purple sky fills the deepest cranny in the valley, turning it into a reservoir. Look, a mountain at the end of the night. You can see it if you lean very close to the aquamarine water. The lake has extra coves, extra crenellations at night. The lake water is purple. There's one light across the lake, a single light, not a lit house. I want to say it's a red light, but it isn't a red light. It's a white light, a light light. The sky comes down to us tonight. The sky touches us. The sky gets between us. A little bit of the sky runs into a storm drain. I don't know where it goes from there. You won't ever net this pink flying fish. He sees the side of her leg in the doorway, her left thigh. That's what he sees first. Round tables fill the rooms at a club on slightly different levels. He waits for his friend and his friend's friends. He waits for the waiter. The waiter waits for his friend and his friend's friends. The room quietly turns orange. The fireplace has nothing to do with it. The fireplace is fake. A tendril climbs the wall and runs along the lattice ceiling. Will it drop something down to them? The sun rises over the far side of the lake. Fossils stick out of the brown mud at the bottom of a pit. Shafts of light try to penetrate a forest, but fail. You can see them failing at different heights above. Now, a waterfall of light drenches us. Two floodlights at the top of long poles light up most of an empty parking lot, but an area between the lights remains dark. Steam rises off the lake in the sunlight. A rowboat is half hidden in the reeds across the lake. It's the only boat out. Several kinds of lettuce are lit by a psychedelic light. Everything white turns purple, and everything green turns black and is immediately forgotten. But the purple cannot be forgotten. It is the light of our illusionary, illusionist, illusory, elusive world. The true light, the blinding light, comes from over there. A tall, polite man, the next visitor. Vision, August 16th, 2008. A yellow top hat floats on a dark pool at night. Sue Strasberg, a girl I knew in childhood, looks at me. The clouds will be lit, if nothing else. The clouds will be gold tinted. Light leaks out of the ground, out of cracks in the ground, holes in the ground. A rider on a dark brown horse sits and waits. A drop of moisture on the reins glints in the sun. Someone reaches out over a precipice to pick a wildflower. There, underwater, the duck. His two arms stir up so much muck. This hooked fish won't let itself be reeled in. He turns into a white flag flapping in the wind. The white flag has two black eyes each looking off to the side. L'oblivione ingombra I miei pensieri. That was an inner voice. A dog looks at me with a large gold head and a white nose, a whiteness we're not supposed to see, not supposed to know about. There's another animal in the mix, a silver dog with a very straight back. It points straight up at the sky. Its fluffy silver tail hangs all the way down to the ground. There's sun up there, sky up there, far above the tops of the trees. We can't worry about it. We can only be comforted by the fact that it's there. We have no concept of how much white fur is needed to make this cape. A white fish sticks its head out of the water. A white seahorse, a white carousel horse with a white post through its body. An opera covers the night sky, a mythology, gods and goddesses. It doesn't make much sense. A window is swallowed by the night. The surface of the world looks like the surface of the brain, gray with curving lines scored in it. A cream-colored balloon will carry us into the sky. A face, Richard Nixon's, almost emerges on the dark screen. A man with a derby hat sits at the steering wheel. I can't make out his features at night. He's looking at something. A gold bracelet with a clasp in the shape of a snake head. It has jeweled eyes, ruby eyes. A little monkey with a very white face and white hair looks around. He wants to know what happened here. He tips back his head so he can look straight up at the sky. The little fellow, I shouldn't worry about him. And then I'm going to close by reading two of the shortest poems in the book. Vision, July 8th, 2010. A bright yellow bird, outlined in bright red, flies across the top of the black sky. A monkey stands on a bare branch. There is a giant arch above the landscape, a plastic rainbow. A face wants to emerge, a moose-faced boy, a moose-faced girl. And then Vision, July 8th, 2010, later. The most beautiful blue, yellow, and red. A large blue fish and a smaller yellow fish, which turns into a red fish. The blue fish disappears, and there's only the red fish. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Michael. And next we hear from Roxi Power, who was also instrumental in bringing this crew together. And Roxi is a poet, performer, and publisher whose book, The Songs That Objects Would Sing, was published in 2023. Her next book, A Not Narrative, is forthcoming from Carbonation Press, and she's at work on a manuscript entitled The Bardo of War. Roxi is a member of the Hive Collective, where she podcasts and organizes poetry events in Santa Cruz. She founded and edits the transgenre anthology series Viz Interarts at the University of California, Camp Santa Cruz, where she teaches. Roxi performs in many transgender forms, including live film narration or Neil Benchi around the country, such as the New Orleans Poetry Festival and the Provincetown, Tennessee Williams Festival. Roxi received an AWP Intro Award, and her poems and essays have been widely published, including in American Poetry Review, Anti-Isms, the book, 101 Definitions, and Long Ago. She received an MFA in poetry from Cornell University. Welcome, Roxi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me. What a reading today. I'm really grateful to be reading with in this wonderful series with such great poets, which makes it more delightful that they're good friends. So today, my reading will be thematized around pieces related to the theme of the most current manuscript I'm working on, called The Bardo of War. As many of you know, the Bardo is a liminal space between death and rebirth, according to Tibetan Buddhists, but can also be taken as a metaphor for any liminal space or space of waiting. The first piece, The Bardo of War, is accompanied by my sister Sky Power's paintings. Sky is here today. Wave your hand so people know you. She just had a major retrospective in Provincetown last year, where she has lived and painted for decades. Her newer work is even more exquisite, and I've written to some of these too, but I'm sticking with the theme today. So let me share the screen. Okay. You can see that, Brenda. You're shaking your head. Thank you. Good. The Bardo of War. 1. Two states converge to find between. Not this, not that. The spark leaps across the gap. Blood runs to the other side of the story. No borders contain this stream of human history, speaking to us from the other side of skin. Fresh script. This shock of living trails into something blue without fathom. 2. We keep disappearing the further we climb this mountain in fog, a human caravan of ideographs ending in a home lit by red memory. What we miss, mourn the loss of, the body clings to monument, stands at the edge of its story, burned into it. To get back home, the more we cling to form and walk this bridge of words to get back home, the further we are from it. 3. An emulsified ending to this story where freedom cracks out of black smoke, stamped onto history's front page. Show it to yourself. Jagged possibility breaking like a tide of fresh crude on our shores. 4. What once form will unmask it from void's bright patience. A storm of plenty spirals across like the Lucifer ballet. Such grace in withholding. A tsunami posing. Wouldn't we know where to go from the gap if we had a guide? 5. Things move into shapeliness, plotting our course out of bright uncertainty. Who invents this game board takes the spoils. If you squint your eyes, this shield disappears and we guard nothing again. 6. Tribe gathers itself around a single unwritten idea of itself. We could be anybody churning our language from scratch, antennae open to symbols, signals, suffering nothing in this yellow dance. We find a language like tools, like weapons, like joyful pitchforks to dig into the soil of the next era. 7. We may foment a body loud as words and make this stuff up as we go along. Musical staff, distaff, hard to say whose harmony, if. 8. Not all one, but each one. 0-degree moon, upset continents wail for circuitry. A bride to the fixed blue. We could have a constitution and or a poem. 9. Nothing like a single constitution, like a plastic menu sure of its tourist attractions. Speech is protected with certain limits. This window inside your cell gives you hope and a horizon to constitute. 10. Soon as one idea of order constitutes itself, then it's Balkan City, too many in this dance. It makes me want to switch sides, a loose confederacy of swing. 11. Every new republic had its cabaret. 12. When tempted, stave the measure of, a place for the eye to conquer itself, then dance the light top sweetly. 13. How lucky we are, back to cell transformation, soft with this blue apple. 14. When we came back from the other side, we couldn't take any luggage. Security asked for an ID. We composed our face. It's all we have. Okay, so the next piece is from the book that just came out last year called The Songs That Objects Would Sing. So there are a lot of singing objects, a lot of poems written to song. I'm working on a long piece right now to Bill Evans, a suite of Bill Evans songs. This one opens the book and it's called Tracking the Lost Nerve, a call and response to Miles Davis's Saeta from Sketches of Spain. And usually when I perform this, I do it to the song in the background, but it doesn't work on Zoom. So maybe you'll just kind of recognize it if I, or maybe I'll ruin it by doing a little bit of a humming of it. There's a part that's kind of militaristic that goes. You remember that one? Okay. And the first starts out really soft. Na 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 na. 1. A roll of presence infiltrated by scratch and origin. Ominous horizon unfolding in rhythm. One voice solitary cracks the blue surface of twilight. A piercing of matador vocabulary. Militant but troubled troubadour neighboring the pink beginning of the solo. His voice, the cry of wilderness inside a graph of obligation. Everywhere you listen, a jangle of broken and reconstituted memories, fairly new to this aperture. They came, they cried, and they left, leaving regiment in their wake. 2. That old urn of loss. Against the night of your absence, one trumpet plays. Its voice a crisp green pear hanging on the last tree. In the unseen mountains, yellow cymbals shake on aspen, still clinging, rhizomatically connected in a forest, a family, still intact. On trumpet days, I feel your paper-thin hand holding mine, pulling me into a forest I meant to visit when you came long ago. Now we sing of this as though it's myth. Resurrection only happens when we resurface, after a long sleep in ocean's twilight. Truth flares, an electric blue iris after the last winter rain. Grace, that old note, that old snatch of song that takes you there, will return and return, though you will not. And because we're on this very fun, I do have some comical poems in here, but how can you be funny about war? So this is called A Very Fragile Radio Wave. And it sort of illustrates the book's theme and preoccupation with the objects left behind by a beloved after she passed. All I have is your hummingbird letter opener, broken now by clumsy misuse, then over-signified to amplify the gap between the living and the dead. I leave this room of objects that bind me to the broken, swerve around plots of American flags, private sidewalks of guarded eyes, fencing in what is theirs on the 4th of July. Repair to the garden of my friend. Anna's hummingbirds, your favorite tussle for the blue hydrangea. Everything returns me to you, a very fragile radio wave I tune into now. Radio free you, if I'm lucky, streaming beyond punctuated time of life, death. To feel the emptiness, you need the form, and when the form is gone, I need new guises to remind me how to talk to what is missing as though it's not. Conjure a continuum of plenty without resorting to spiritual procrastination. See you in heaven, etc. We scribble poems as planes strafe the redwoods, compete with monster truck song. Further afield, the cement white skies of Lincoln Plaza, rigor mortis with black jets. Words fly across shadows on our pages. My finger, ringed by the turquoise you left, curls around the pen that writes toward you as you recede. One hummingbird is made whole by the flowering maple. We brush against our own signals and listen for further instructions. And then here's one from the Bardo of War called Sejura. Is that right? Is that what I'm doing next? Yeah. Time stemmed, strong now, in July. Leaves bursting the hemisphere, giving cover to warblers whose secrecy songs preface future laments more numerous than advancing storms. These sejuras of plenty demarcate a brook song of progress, cleansing a wintry spring's doubt fest of its useless debris. Measured outposts of silt and despair turn to small forts to which the just born repair. You stretch out this hour as if it were a given claim on eternity, folding time like random ripples in night-cool sheets, while we dream of a summer that mirages on ad infinitum. The hummingbird is a buzz saw, cutting new time into the green air with its swerve. We retreat with her we retreat with her from the news and all it pretends, masquerading as eternity, a blossom of edges so thick with cutting we stagger to trees. Is somebody coming to enlist our attention on a new war, a new pipeline? War songs and mourning songs interweave in the backdrop of July. But the ancient ferns won't stand up in attention. The brook will ripple on, the crow cackle, as bombs scream into the green joy, maddened by freedom. And here's a shaggier piece that I just started, and it's just the beginning of a longer poem called Segmented Saturated, from the Bardo of War. It opens with a quote. A long poem is characterized by multiple interlocks of segmentivities, Rachel Blau du Plessis. Do you remember snakegrass by the ditch where we raced boats and bet on water skippers? Bored, we desegment the grass, send each tiny tube floating in a rhythm, a race to the end of the yard, which was like a mind or a stanza, an open field with bolt holes for hide and seek. I'll hide the metaphor, the heteroglossia, the polyglot shows, and tu les souviens, like being tagged by pound, or more likely excluded, left there hiding in a bush as he forgot to call all ye income free. Income free? He may have approved of free income, but not for bankers, financiers of war. Money flow charts, tipping points, excursions to the edge of the field, the page, the pay period. Now, rents are raised to shore up falling hillsides during years of drought, then floods, same year. Try not to complain. What uplifting Christmas movie should we watch? We unwatch White Christmas. Our traditional Lord of the Rings, too much this year with news segments. Flashes of Palestinian children swaddled in blood-soaked t-shirts. Can you be present for everyone's trauma without pulling the pin on your own kaboom? How can we untell the story of war before it goes to print? How can we unlisten to it, unsee the rubble as we recover during the holidays? No chance. In Bethlehem, they strew rubble where the creche was supposed to be to make us see. We see our own rubble, so much we can't see. I'm saturated as that hillside already, shored up by nylon netting and shallow stakes, a long falling poem, and it's just started. And finally, looking at the time, yeah, I think I have time for this, slow motion ghost story. And this piece returns us to the ekphrastic theme and will appear in the book Not Narrative, which is spelled K-N-O-T, not Narrative, to be published next year by Carbonation Press. It's a prose poem. 1. Outside the Legion of Honor, the San Francisco Bay lit with a shadow that Flemish masters knew. Each shadow in the green cliffs of Marin accents its curved counterpart of light. Swerved cables of the Golden Gate Bridge sink into the rock, windowed turrets touching the sculptural sky. As I sit on a stone bench outside the museum, the fog rolls in, moving on me like a memory animal. Slow motion ghost story floating across the rolling green fields, flowing like folds in a velvet dress worn by the Flemish governess. The painting behind the painting. Within this pocket-sized journal, I keep ghosts. I slipped your black and white portrait inside, the one on your Celebration of Life program. Attached the memento to everyone's copy with a bit of rubber, the kind you find on new credit cards, so they could decorate their refrigerators with the sadness and beauty of your gaze. The one that suggests he did you wrong, we could have done more, but what's the point of crime? You endure. It's what a camera can do, or a painter who never had one. 2. Take Franz Hals, for instance. John Berger says of Hals, we mystify the governess's face as shining on a field of black when we call it harmonious, universal. We don't see the coins dropped into Hals's hands to purchase small scoops of peat. He lit the stove to warm these hands that immortalized white faces, ovals of contempt that stare forever at his rags, which become our rags in his eyes. The story behind the story, like a ghost, haunts the painting. The painting becomes an image frozen in time, a postcard that decorates our own stories. Technology fills in the voids, our own vision appropriated. Little squares like Enlightenment-era lawns, tidy upper-class history stares back, dressed in blood-red robes and waistcoats of crepuscular blue. Everything centers on the eye of the observer. They bore their eyes into you, knowing their reach beyond legions of unremarked grazers of gilt and blue velvet. 3. Inside the rotunda dedicated to fallen soldiers, the world-famous organist plays minor chords, honoring the fog of war, the French fallen. Refrains, he said, that would be familiar to the decorative painter of the aristocracy, James Tissot, in the special exhibit. I prefer the nymphs and burghers of Rodin and his own grizzled head sculpted by his oft-neglected lover, Claudel. After I saw her movie, I wrote for weeks of forgotten but extraordinary throw-overs. Carmen, Frida, Georgia, Claudette. They stare back at us from umbrellas, socks, and floating lanterns in the museum store. Their rage reduced to pleasing crimson lips, boxed and curated for us to take home. 4. The guards, who can't say where to find Franz Hals, pace impatiently. Within the hour, some will call out, 15 minutes to closing! Our dreams pierced. They'll reclaim their time, disrobed of tight martial suits, on several late buses, headed home over bridges and fog. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roxy. And thank all of you. It's been an amazing reading. Thank you, Brenda, Ronaldo, Michael, and Roxy. And Roxy, thank you also for helping to pull this team together. Next, we hear from John Wesick, who's our technical director at Lit Balm and also the regional editor of the San Diego Poetry Annual. He's published hundreds of poems and stories in journals such as the Atlanta Review, Berkeley Fiction Review, I-70 Review, Patterson Literary Review, Pyrene's Fountain, and many others. His most recent books are The Shaman in the Library and The Prague. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to share the screen. This and... here we are. Okay, this piece is called Physics 101 Final Exam in a Post-Truth Society. And the answers come from the most Dunning-Kruger comments on physics YouTube videos. Question number 1. A 2,000-pound car accelerates to 100 miles per hour in 1320 feet. Assuming a constant acceleration, what force must the engine supply, and how long will the car take to reach this speed? Answer. Science must destroy its current model because special interests have corrupted what should be a source for truth. Question number 2. A cannon elevated 45 degrees from the horizontal fires a projectile at 1,000 meters per second. How far does the projectile travel horizontally before hitting the ground? Answer. The separation of science and religion ushered in pride and ego. God is the answer. Question number 3. A cue ball moving at 3 meters per second collides elastically with a stationary pool ball of the same mass. If the cue ball moves off at 30-degree angle, at what angle does the struck ball move away? What are the final velocities of the two balls? Answer. Academic elites play musical chairs with the winners gaining wealth and prestige. Meanwhile, they ignore the fact that dark matter is merely hydrogen with the electron closer to the nucleus. And as an aside, that's not true. The hydrogen with the electron closer to the nucleus is called the hydrogen atom, and we know about that. That's not dark matter. Question number 4. Calculate the height above Earth's surface that a geosynchronous satellite orbits, and I give some constants there. Answer. The gravitational field does not exist. We have no proof, only acceleration in the vicinity of massive bodies. That is not proof. Question number 5. What is the acceleration of a block sliding down a plane inclined at 30 degrees if the coefficient of friction is 0.2? Answer. When big science suppressed Velikovsky's Worlds and Collision, I lost all respect for physics. Most white dwarfs are trillions of years older than the lamestream age of the universe. This is why conspiracy theorists like me doubt academia. Number 6. What is the period of a 2-meter pendulum? Scientists are dogmatic, arrogant, and willfully ignorant. They need to wake up to the fact that relativity and everything based on it is wrong because the speed of light is not constant. Michelson and Morley proved it in 1887. And he's misquoting Michelson and Morley. They actually proved the opposite. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, John. No one does it like John Wessex. Thank you so much for opening the open. And now we have from his chair looking very fetching in his fall hoodie. I think the fall hoodie needs to be a all year round hoodie. DeWitt, can't wait to hear you read.
Am I hearable? Okay. This is called figurative anatomy. Lily-livered, we say, meaning cowardly, but little else. Lily because white, not sweet-smelling. White because ancient Greeks believed that a light-colored liver was deficient in bile or choler, and hence lacking in vigor, spirit, or courage. Humer's theory reigned for centuries. Vital organs supposedly discharged fluids, black and yellow bile, phlegm, and blood. Blood itself was produced by either liver or heart, leading to a sanguine disposition, meaning warm, active, social. Yellow bile came from the spleen and prompted anger or choler, while phlegm from the brain prompted apathy and cowardice. From the liver, black bile prompted melancholy. In time, one discovery or belief displaced another. As human dissections became legal in Europe, see Rembrandt's The Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Nicholas Tulp. And with the invention of the microscope in the 1590s, Humer's psyche gave way to germ theory. Euroculture learned about arteries, veins, and circulation from the heart. William Harvey, 1628. Then blood cells, bacteria, and spermatozoa. Anton von Leeuwenhoek, 1670. Until the 1880s, bloodletting, a specialty of barbershops, were applying leeches was thought to cure disorders of mind and body. Vaccines were discovered by Edward Jenner in 1796. Cowpox prevented smallpox. Animal to human Blood transfusions failed, as did most human to human, until as late as 1900, when Karl Landsteiner classified the 4 main blood groups. X-rays and internal imaging date from 1895. Anesthesia, other than alcohol and opium, 1846. Aspirin, as we know it, 1896. Open heart surgery, 1893. And then more modern miracles. Antibodies, 1928. Electron microscope, 1928. DNA differentiation. CTs and MRIs, 1944. Polio vaccine, 1953. Open transplant, 1954. AI, 1956. In vitro fertilization, 1958. Contraceptive pill, 1960. Macking genomes, 2003. COVID-19 vaccine, 2020. Gene editing and splicing, 2023. Seemingly, we understand our bodies better than ever. Yet, where will we be in 3000? Where will our societies be? How will we look back? Will we cure cancer, eliminate genetic diseases, slow aging, transform sex, race, body types, and intelligence? Breed primary characteristics? Distribute genes for the fittest fairly to all? What will be the legacy of our bodies and spirits? Will our metaphors remind us of ignorance or pain or gain? Will cowardice find measure with honor? Survival count for more than glory? Without self-improvement, how can we imagine paradise? Cryogenics, anyone? Any bets?
Thank you so much. I love your poems about the body, but we love sharing bodily fluids with you. So thank you so much for coming along. That was a cracker. Thank you so much. May, I've asked May if she would read something for us because we always get something wonderful. So May, what have you got?
Ooh. Am I the last?
No, we always end with
okay. Okay. So something heavy then. World Trade Center, 1993. If I told you that he and I only spoke as we passed in a hallway at work on infrequent mornings, and that although we were friendly, we were not friends, would that make a difference in my guilt? If I admitted that one day he stopped to say that he had gone home to Jordan and returned with a bride, and that when radiating joy, he later announced that his wife had given him a son, I had touched his arm and congratulated him, would that make a difference in his prison sentence? If I confessed that when he asked if I went into New York City, that I, a nice woman, should not go to such an evil place, I lied. I told him I never go to the city. And he seemed relieved. Would you then, after I said all this, could you forgive me? And if I told you that after I left the company, I recognized his face on the front page and read of his role in the first World Trade Center bombing, learned he had murdered 6 people, including a pregnant woman, and injured 1,000 more, that he had been caught after the exploded van's ID number was recovered from the wreckage, that my friend had purchased the materials and assisted in building the bomb. Yes, I called him my friend. And how angry I was that he fucked up his life and the lives of his young wife and baby. Will telling you keep me from wondering if there was anything I could have said to him that would have changed his mind, that I could have done something to stop him, that I could have saved a friend as he believed he had spared me? Won't you please tell me that?
Wow, and you always read your poetry so well. We love heavy poetry. It's always so moving. May, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
We actually have Bill next. Bill is going to read something for us in the opener here. I'm very excited. Bill.
Bill, you're muted, I guess.
I had to look around to unmute myself. Thank you. It's a privilege to read today. This has been such a great reading. This is called Open and Concealed. My father went to war and flew like ancient gods. My battles were only pretend among young boys. Our cap guns went bang, air rifles went puff. We wore coonskin caps and killed hundreds of people indigenous to the land and Mexicans reclaiming the Alamo from invader slavers. We killed many Nazis, Red Chinese, and cowboy bandits who robbed banks and rustled cattle. We were wounded or killed too. Many times I clutched my chest and fell dramatically the short distance to the grass. I've escaped the real wars of all my days so far, drawing a high number in the draft lottery for Vietnam. But now it appears a next war may not be easily escaped. Guns are all around. You've heard the talk. So-called militias are outright insurrectionists. PSYOP fantasies spun out of dark money, blare out of television, feed news, meaning newest lies, into electronic devices in everyone's pockets and purses. The oldest themes of race and patriarchy and brute authority stirred dark enthusiasms, telecast in living colors as horrific plans, killing dreams. It's both open and concealed carry. The elements of native and slave oppression, a people in arms with slave patrol militias, emerges from history's well-kept secrets, well-kept shadows, as ghosts of tragedy still unfolding. How shall we sustain our better hopes?
Wow, thank you. Horrific plans, killing dreams. So many really weighty lines there. Thank you for sharing. And it had a wonderful ending as well that really makes us think beyond the poem ending, which is the way I like to read poetry. So thank you. Thanks so much, Bill.
Thank you.
We end with our dynamic duo. We have Brooklyn laureate Cindy from the lounge room. She always has something delightful and exciting for us. Cindy.
Okay. I'm not wearing my badass poet shirt because I'm wearing my Harris Wolf shirt. Mine with the cat lady on it. To be not to vote for Trump under any circumstance. I think, as if I need a reminder, I think it makes sense to read from my last chapter, my latest chapter, even though it's 2 years old, because two of the blurbists happen to be here. Cassandra Atherton and Michael Ruby wrote beautiful words for a nominal fee, but it was worth it. And the poem I'm going to read was published in Survision, which I know Michael has been published in, and which I wouldn't know about if it weren't for this wonderful Lit Balm reading. So it's called Nueve Preguntas, and I have no idea why I titled it in Spanish, but it means 9 questions, and the number 9 refers to the 9 circles of hell in Dante's Inferno. I'm up to number 5 in my life, but we'll see. Nueve Preguntas. When did I stop leaping through scorched earth wildfires and blistering infernos? Why did God put a curse upon my right breast? Why did I think that gold rings and matrimony was such a capital idea? When did I learn that love does not conquer all? It doesn't even conquer half. When did tubs of chubby hubby ice cream become my go-to dinner? When did I fall from that flimsy tightrope of my own making? When did my flaxen hair turn to sullen streaks of gunmetal gray? When did you turn from corporeal skin to utter dust? When did I, oh, sweet Jesus, grow a tail? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure any of us would endorse your poetry all day long. We absolutely love it. We look forward to it at the end of Lit Balm. Thank you so much, Cindy. And of course, we have to end with the kitchen laureate. We love hearing his final words. He'll have something special for us to think about long after Lit Balm has ended. No pressure, Bob. What do you got?
Thanks. Okay. A new information piece. Information. The horse is no longer part of the plot. The moon, always a point of reference. The woman holds the road down until a carriage can arrive. The importance of this not realized until it is too late.
Wow. That's why he's Bob Heyman, everyone, and that's why he has information. So there's nothing better. Mark, over to you. Your dulcet tones are muted, sadly.
Apologies. Thank you once again to Brenda, Ronaldo, Michael, and Roxy especially for pulling this crew together. Thank you for that wonderful show. And just to let you know, we have coming up fairly shortly, October 12 and October 13, a weekend show, the Theatre of the Absurd. And there will be absurdists from all over the planet, so please do join us. It'll be up on the website soon. And well, what can I say? Between the feature and the open mic, there's little left to say except for this, which is through the mirage. That floundering, the use of speech, petals of dew collecting sleep, awaiting a second life, and being now the voice in the voiceless garden, all those compromises from 0 + 1, a vision of the curves of paradise and the spell of pardon. Don't you know, sweet creature, your lover's kisses strain the numbers. Today, my heart, you shall repair your mask. Watch the panoply of smoke. Truth, you say, wherever there is truth. These things are buried in the sand, you say. These things, sweet creature, are the light showers of the universe. Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful show. Lots of love and poetry. And hope to see you October 12 and 13 for the Theatre of the Absurd. Thank you once again, Roxy, for all your help and everything in this show. And, well,
My pleasure.
Rock and roll.
Long
Thank you.
Island Iced forever.
Wish we could all hang together.
Yeah, me too.
Well, you know, if we
Feels
don't
like we
hang
are,
together, we'll hang separately. So
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How magic, huh? Well,